All right, you guys, hello and welcome to this tutorial on transformations. And this specific transformation we're working on today is rotation. Now, for my students and for me personally, this transformation is one of the tougher ones to understand. There's a few different ways to go about doing it, and I'm going to show you the easiest way that my students the easiest way that my students are grasping the information. And it's basically by using the rules, the rotation rules. So I'm going to go ahead and start with those. And don't worry if it doesn't make sense to you right now, because it will once we show it. Okay, but I just want to get down really quick out of the way. I want, so if you guys are taking notes, you should be writing these down. Okay, so if we are going to do 180-degree rotation, it doesn't matter if we're going clockwise or counterclockwise, because let's say if this is our image, if we're going 180-degree rotation, it's going to end up over here somewhere in this quadrant. And so if we're going this way, clockwise, we'll get there. And if we're going counterclockwise, we'll get there because it's a straight line and 180-degree rotation. Okay, so it doesn't matter what direction. So I'm going to skip the direction. I'm just going to write the rule. Okay, so the rule is any point that you have, X and Y is our ordered pair, it is going to still stay X and Y, but you're going to take the opposite of X and the opposite of Y. So an example, let me just make my pen a little bit smaller here, but an example of that, if, let's do our examples in a different color, but if I had, let's say if I had 2, -4 as my point, and I'm doing a 180-degree rotation, I am going to still keep X and Y the same order. X goes first, Y goes second, but it's going to be in the opposite of X. So the opposite of my 2 here is going to be -2, and the opposite of my -4 is going to be a +4. Okay, so let's just graph that right now just to show you what that looks like. My original point was 2. Where's my thing here? So my original point was 2, and my X was 2, and it's kind of hard to see in this color. So let's go back to our blue. But my original point was X was 2 and Y was -4. And so the point would be right here. Okay, with 180-degree rotation, my X then was -2. If I can find my little teeny tiny. Okay, so my X was -2 and my Y then became 4. So with that, yes, sorry, I had to double check because that didn't look right, but yes, -2, 4. So basically, if I take my line here from this to this point, do you see how it goes about, or I'm sorry, I forgot to say about the origin, but from this point, if I did the 180-degree rotation, okay, about the origin, my point would end up right here. Doesn't matter if you went, like I showed you right now, counterclockwise, or if you're going to go, or sorry, this way is counterclockwise. The way I showed you the first time was clockwise. But it doesn't matter which way you go because you're gonna get there either way. But that is kind of just an example of what we're talking about here. And I also want to write down the 3 things that you need to have in order to perform a rotation. So I'm just going to put need to have, and again, if you're taking notes, write this down. Okay, so in order to perform a rotation, you need to know the degree in which you are performing the rotation. So a 90 degree, 180 degree, what degree are you moving? And then you also need to know the direction. Okay, so are you going counterclockwise or are you going clockwise? And the last thing that you need to know is about. Sometimes people say around what point. So a really common one is around or about the origin, or it could be a 90-degree counterclockwise rotation about point A. So either you can rotate around a point or you can rotate around the origin. Those are the two main ones that we usually see in 6th and 7th grade. But that, or sorry, 6th and 7th grade, I mean 7th and 8th grade. So that's that. Sorry if you can hear my cat. So right here we had the degree, we had the direction, it doesn't matter with the 180 degrees, and then we had about the origin. It was the example that I showed you. So the next rotation rule, I'm going to do a 90-degree rotation. The direction is going to be clockwise. And then about the origin is my example, but this rule can work for any around or about any point. It's not just the origin, so I'm not going to write that here. But basically what it says is you start with any point, X and Y, okay, and then you flip the X and the Y point, okay, and clockwise means that you're going to the right, right? So I'm going to put an R right here for the right. So the way I remember this rule is that my right number has to be opposite. So I'm going to take the opposite of X, or my X number. This is in the Y location, but you know what I mean. So we flop the X and the Y, we switch those locations. So my Y number would go first, and I think it would make more sense if I showed you an example. So let's take a look. If I had the numbers, let's say 4, 3 as my point, then my 4 and my 3 would switch places. So my Y would go first, and then my X, but I'm going to make the X opposite. So instead of a 4, it would be a -4. Okay, and these are my new X and Y coordinates. Okay, so let me show you with these points the example. So again, let me change my color here so you can see it better on white. But my original point was 4, 3, so it was this point right here. And now my 90-degree my 90-degree clockwise, around or about the origin, my new point is going to be 3, -4. So right here. So if this was our original point A, this would be the A prime, okay? And I know it's 90 degrees about the origin because if I draw a line from that point, the original point to the origin, and then the origin to my point prime, I have a 90-degree angle here, okay? And I went clockwise, right? If you went counterclockwise, it would be a 270-degree rotation counterclockwise. Okay, but we're not looking into that right now. So that would be the example for the 90-degree clockwise about or around the origin. Okay. let me see. All right, so now that we got that erased, we are going to now take a look at our last rotation rule, which is a 90-degree counterclockwise. Okay, so again, if I start out with any point, my X and Y point, it is going to flip, just like it did for the clockwise. So my Y, let me just move that over a little bit. My Y is going to go first, and then my X, okay? But this time, counterclockwise is going to the left this way, right? And I'll put a little L right there to represent counterclockwise is going to the left. And so for this new point, it is my left number that is going to be opposite. So remember when we talked about the clockwise, this is your original point here, and this is your image point or your point prime, and it was the right number. So in both clockwise and counterclockwise, you're flipping the X and the Y for the new point. Okay, your Y goes first, then your X. Here, counterclockwise, your Y goes first, then your X. And the only difference is when you go clockwise to the right number gets the opposite. When you go counterclockwise, which is to the left number gets its opposite. It's turned into the opposite. So let's take a look at this one as an example. This time I'm going to say if I had negative numbers. So like say if I had a -1, -3 as my original point. Moving to this new point, 90-degree counterclockwise rotation, I'm going to flip. So I'm going to put my Y first, which is -3, and then my X, which is -1, but I'm going to take the opposite of my Y. So instead of a -3, it's going to be a +3. Okay? And so to plot that as an example, I am going to, my original point was -1, -3. So let's just call this A. And again, this is around the origin that we're doing the example for. So the new point or the point prime, A prime, would be +3, -1. So this would be the A prime. Okay, and again, if I drew a line from point A to the origin, and then I drew it out to this point, it is a 90-degree rotation there as well. Okay, so in another video, in my next video, I am going to go over, oops, I deleted one too many. Okay, so I'm going to go over some more tips about rotation, so check that out. It should be up. If it's not up, I will have it out for you guys very soon. Okay, but anything that is related to this, I will have links for down in the description, so be sure to check those out, and I will see you guys in the next one.